What's up, fellow bike nerds? Welcome back to the Weekly Rewind presented by 99 Spokes, where we catch you up on all the hottest cycling news from the previous week. This time around, we're going all in on gravel. One of the biggest gravel events of the year, Unbound, took place this past weekend. And along with some record-breaking racing, we saw loads of newly released products and prototypes. But it only seems fitting to kick things off with something we've been anticipating for quite a few months now, and that is the Canyon Grail Rift, or more specifically, its fork. Our suspicions of a Canyon DT Swiss collaboration have officially been confirmed, and now we have all the details on the Canyon and DT Swiss F132-1. It features 40 millimeters of travel and an all-new air spring and damper. Controlling that damper is a cable-actuated two-position lockout remote DT Swiss is calling push control. The lever, which mounts at the front of the drops, is designed to be actuated from a variety of positions on the bars. When pressed, it pulls on a continually rotating ratchet located on the fork's crown, meaning there is no specific lock or open mode. Push it once to switch it from lock to open, and push it again to switch it back to where you started. On top of all the performance stuff we already mentioned, one of the biggest reasons Canyon says they contracted DT Swiss to make this fork was actually aesthetically driven. They wanted something that looked super minimal and unobtrusive. They've hidden most of the external adjustments away under caps and, in the case of the rebound dial, into the leg itself. The lockout cable and front brake hose have also been routed through the steer tube to keep the cockpit as tidy as on a rigid bike. But coming with all of those features is a bit of a weight penalty. The new fork has a claimed weight of 1,340 grams, which is about 100 grams more than competitors from Fox or RockShox. As of right now, the DT Swiss F132 is a Canyon-only product, and the only way you can get it is via the Grail CFR Rift Complete bike. But this is slated to change in 2026 when it will become a standalone DT Swiss product. The new fork, and the bike that it's spec'd on, was not the only gravel-related product we saw come out this past week. And things like the Venton GS1 and the whole slew of tires released by IRC definitely caught our eye. But you know what's even more exciting than newly released products? Prototypes. And boy, did we see a ton of them at Unbound. The first of which we're going to talk about looks to be a future specialized Diverge. The overall architecture of the new bike hasn't strayed far from the previous version, but the slightly deeper head tube and fork legs hint at a potential aerodynamic advantage. Tire clearance appears to be increased as well. The current Diverge can only fit 47mm rubber, but the prototype bike we saw at Unbound had some massive 2.2-inch mountain bike tires spec'd on it. Other details include UDH compatibility and, at least on one of the bikes spotted at Unbound, a one-piece cockpit. Something that hasn't changed is Specialized's continued commitment to the Future Shock system, at least at the front of the bike. Now, one thing that we couldn't tell from the blurry spy shots that were taken at the event is whether or not this is the same Future Shock that we saw on the previous gen bike, but seeing as that system is coming up on 5 years old, we'd guess that this prototype is running an all-new design. Maybe a gravel version of the Future Shock 3.0 found on the Roubaix endurance bike. Whatever the case is, we're guessing we'll find out pretty soon, because this bike, out of basically all the ones we looked at this past weekend, seems to be the closest to production. Prototype number 2 comes from Wilier, but to be honest, without the subtle black-on-black logos on the down tube, I wouldn't have been able to tell. It honestly looks nothing like their current range of bikes. The raw carbon frame features a deep head tube and fork legs, narrow top tube, and massively tapered down tube with a recessed bottle cage mount. The seat stays appear to be further dropped as well. There's also a super fast looking cockpit with a headset cap integrated into the frame and a negative rise one-piece bar stem combo. But it's not just aero. Tire clearance seems to be improved as well. The current Wilier Rave tops out at just 42mm, but we saw this prototype running some 50C Schwalbe G1 RS Pros. Of all the bikes we saw this past weekend, this one looks to be deepest in the prototype phase, so we're hoping to see more renditions come out before it reaches production. And as we do, we'll fill you in right here on the Weekly Rewind. So you might as well hit subscribe if you haven't already. Up next is a wild-looking prototype from Pinarello. I'm assuming most folks will be happy to hear that the kinked down tube is gone, and in its place is a much more conventional design with what looks to be a small storage compartment near the top. Another big change from Pinarello's current line of gravel bikes are the dropped seat stays, which now meet the front triangle nearly halfway down the seat tube. There are also quite a few more mounting points, including a 3-pack on the fork legs, frame bag mounts in the front triangle, and a final pair of mounts on the top of the top tube. One thing that doesn't appear to have changed is tire clearance, which is fair seeing as the current gen Grevil already fits 50mm rubber. Other updates include UDH compatibility, front and rear fender mounts, and what looks to be a new, even more sculpted seat post. Our next prototype comes from a brand that's been making a lot of waves in the mountain bike space lately, and that's Orbea. This new frame ditches the more traditional lines of the current Terra in favor of a sharper, racier silhouette. It gets a much lower seat stay junction, slimmer tubing, and drop chainstays, the latter of which surely helps with the increased tire clearance, which looks to be right around 50mm. Unlike a lot of the prototypes we're highlighting today, which have deep aerodynamic fork legs borrowed from the world of road racing, the Orbeas are decidedly narrow. This would of course seem to aid in weight savings, but I can't help but wonder if there's some tune compliance worked into them as well. Also on the bike are a pair of prototype wheels from Orbea's in-house component brand, Oquo, which feature a deep carbon rim and what appear to be all new straight pull hubs. It's awesome to see so many new products from the Spanish brand, and these will definitely be on our radar as they move closer to production. Now, it's one thing to show up at Unbound with one new prototype, but that wasn't enough for Factor. So they brought two. The first of which is what they're calling the Eludo, which is being marketed as a multi-purpose, versatile adventure bike. There's no word yet on geometry, but it looks a bit more conservative, maybe leaning more towards the all-road side of things than the mountain bike-inspired bikes we've seen coming out as of late. The tubing is also super slim, even more so than the current Austro race bike. Once again, hinting at a bike that seeks to combine road bike weight and handling with gravel capability. Adding to my suspicion, some relatively narrow 47mm tire clearance and front derailleur mounts. Rounding out the details on the new bike are a down tube storage compartment and UDH compatibility. Factor's second prototype bike that they brought to Unbound takes things in the complete opposite direction. This yet-to-be-named model is a dedicated gravel race bike that goes all in on aero, compliance, and of course, tire clearance. At the front of the bike is a super deep head tube that splits into a slim, low-slung top tube and a relatively narrow down tube as well, though the latter of which does still appear to feature a storage compartment. The seat stays intersect the curved seat tube very low in the frame, which should help to improve both compliance and aerodynamics. Speaking of compliance, the Unbound bike was spec'd with a RockShox Rudy fork and 2.1-inch Continental Race King mountain bike tires. All these things add up to make a bike that should be just as fast as it is comfortable. That's a combination I can get behind. There's no word yet on when either of these two bikes are going to reach production, but when we find out, we'll let you know. Well, that was a whole lot of bikes that you can't buy, so let's go ahead and transition to one that you can, and get 50% off on top of that. This week's deal of the week is the previous generation Pivot Vault Ultegra Di2, which usually lists for $6,700, but at 45% off from backcountry.com is currently $3,700. For that, you get a 2x12 Ultegra Di2 group set, DT Swiss CR1600 spline wheels, and a lightweight carbon frame set. Seeing as it is the previous generation model, the geometry and tire clearance are a bit more conservative when compared to the other bikes we've been talking about today, but that could make it a great candidate for someone looking for a slightly more capable all-road bike, almost like that Factor we talked about a second ago. Backcountry currently has this Vault available in small, large, and extra large, but with 45% off, I'm guessing they're not going to stick around very long. We've got an affiliate link to check it out down there in the description. Last but not least, since we've been highlighting all the bikes of Unbound, we thought it only fitting that we take some time to talk about the riders. Both the 350-mile Unbound XL and Unbound 200 delivered great racing this year, with favorable weather leading to record-breaking times across the board. For the longer race, Factor's Rob Britton broke the previous course record by over 2 hours after overtaking second-place finisher Lachlan Morton late in the race. Much further back, Robin Gemperle rounded out the podium in third. On the women's side, Heather Jackson had a commanding lead from start to finish, once again breaking the all-time women's record with a time of 20 hours, 57 minutes, and 57 seconds. This would have placed her in the top 10 of the men's division. Over an hour later, Serena Gordon crossed the line for second, and finally, Kristen Ligon took third. Finally, it was time for the 200-mile race, where we saw even more records get smashed. On the men's side of things, it was Scott Shimano rider Cameron Jones who narrowly clinched victory with a record-setting time of 8 hours, 37 minutes, and 9 seconds. Just behind him was Simon Pelot, who had hung with Jones in a two-way breakaway most of the race. And finally, Torbjorn Roed secured third place after a sprint to the line. In the elite women's race, Carolina Magon continued her winning streak with a commanding solo performance, finishing in 10 hours, 3 minutes, and 54 seconds, the fastest women's time in event history. Her teammate, Cecily Decker, overcame a hydration mishap to claim second place, while Sofia Gomez-Villane rounded out the podium in third. Now, if those epic shots don't motivate you to get out and have a little fun and maybe suffer a little bit as well, I don't know what will. And that seems like a great way to wrap up this week's episode of the Weekly Rewind. We'll be here, same time, same place next week. And until then, remember that bikes are for everyone. Have fun out there.